So welcome to Satsang today. Namaste. So tonight for Satsang, I wanted to do something slightly different, and I'm going to do a two-part Satsang. Part one will be this one called Seeing and Being. So tonight we're going to focus on learning a few simple things, hopefully that will help you really recognize what you actually are. So I would like to, well, pretty much everything I do is about destroying this idea that it's difficult to recognize what you are fully. And next week we'll look at how to be that. So tonight will be the seeing, and next week, next Thursday, same time, will be the being part of that. Because there's a lot of ideas in people, there was in my own self, that this is the most difficult thing to do in the world. And I don't really see why it should be like that. I really experienced it being long and drawn out and difficult, and I feel quite passionate that with a few simple facts and some pointers on how to look, that it need not be that difficult at all or take that long. If it is already what we are, the real self, the one self, then how can it be so difficult? Why should it be so difficult? So with that in mind, tonight, I would like you to participate with me and follow along with what I'm talking about if you would like to experience a deeper seeing. No matter how many times you've seen, maybe this is the first time you're going to come to realize that you're not what you thought you were. Or if you've experienced that before, that there's something intangible about you, that you're not at all a someone, then you can see that deeper. Each time we look, we can see it deeper, and we can come to be ever clearer, ever more convinced. The more convinced we are of what we really are, the less effect our mind will have upon us. It will just be a voice talking in the emptiness. And so it's vital that we get some real experience of what we actually are. Right from that very first time, it's going to start to give you some distance from your mind vibrationally, so that instead of it talking right here in front of you, it'll just be a voice off in the distance. So the first thing I want to say is that we can all start by wiping the slate clean and accepting that if nobody has really shown you how to look for your real self, then it's not our fault that we can't do it. People, and my own self as well, we have this idea inside that I should know how to find it, and that there's something wrong with me if I can't find it. But if everything else that you participate in your entire existence is asking you to look for objects, to look at objects, then it makes sense really that we'll come to our satsang not really knowing how to look for that which is not an object. So if that's how you're feeling, if there's a should inside you, and you can forgive yourself right now, if you were going to learn to speak a foreign language and you'd booked classes to do that, you wouldn't be blaming yourself before the first lesson if you couldn't speak that foreign language. And yet this is what all of us pretty much are doing inside ourselves. I should know how to look. And just because it's right here, and just because it's always present, the real self, doesn't mean that we should automatically know how to look. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to really go into this, and we can hopefully start with a fresh slate. So The first thing to note about looking for what is here permanently is that it's here right now. So that means we don't have to manufacture it. We don't have to try to get it. We don't have to exert any effort at all to perceive what is always here. We just have to learn whichever way in particular for us that we find accessible to look at what is constant in our experience, what is unchanging, and what is insubstantial. So rather than your mind being something that's getting in the way of your seeing what you really are, we can use the phenomena that are arising. Phenomena just being something that comes and goes, has a duration, has a start or a stop. It can be perceived. So my body can be perceived. I can see it with my eyes. It's a phenomena because it had a start, it has an end. It's not going to be here forever. It's tangible, and it fits all the categories for a phenomena. And if a thought passes through my awareness, then I can perceive that in my awareness. I can't see it with my physical eyes, but it's still a phenomena nonetheless. It has a beginning and it has an end, and it has a duration, albeit much shorter than our body. So phenomena coming and go are always coming and going, and all of our life we're trained to put attention on these first and foremost. So all we're going to do tonight is look at ways to use the presence of these phenomena. What if your thoughts and your emotions are a springboard to help you contrast into what you actually are? What if they're not actually in the way at all, but can be used in a very simple way? So right now, if you're feeling any particular emotion, or if you're thinking any thoughts go through your mind, you can notice those thoughts only because you're aware of them. So this is the first way we're going to look. We're going to go through lots of different ways in this talk, and there's plenty more in my book, Dissolving the Ego, to recognize what you actually are through contrast. So when a thought moves, suddenly it isn't there, and then a second later it appears, and you can kind of see it, not with your eyes, but you can see it, and then it's gone. Where does it disappear to? So when a thought is absent and it suddenly arrives, you can recognize that change because there's something unchanging about you, something that isn't coming and going. So I'm going to call it awareness. You can see the presence or the absence of thoughts. You can see when your mind is talking, and you can see when your mind is not talking. So by contrast of the thoughts arising, we can recognize what is seeing those thoughts. And the important thing to know is when you first recognize the awareness that is the real you, whichever name we're going to call it tonight, we're going to look at it different ways. It's not going to feel amazing. It's not going to come with angels and harps and fireworks and a flashing neon sign that says this is your real self. It's just going to feel like awareness. I'm aware, my awareness. It's not going to feel special at all. And this is the key to really allowing yourself to recognize this clearer and deeper. However your real self is presenting itself in this moment, and it is, if you can welcome and accept that, even if it doesn't feel amazing, if it just feels ordinary, or even if it doesn't match up against some fantastic experience you had where 2 years ago where your mind just went completely quiet and didn't talk at all for 2 months, and there was peace and bliss the whole time. Right now, if you'll honor how it's showing up for you right now, then you begin to feel peaceful. The only way we can get to feeling amazing all the time is by honoring this moment right now. So The presence of thoughts or an emotion can only be noticed because there's awareness. And when you recognize that, then awareness is naturally looking at itself. It's recognizing itself. It's not doing it through your eyes. It's a kind of inner seeing, an inner looking. And the goal of this is not to keep awareness looking at itself. It's going to wander back to looking at thoughts or to an emotion that arises or to a sound in your environment as you're listening, watching. Right now, awareness may be watching what image is on the screen and listening to the words. It's just as simple as that, to recognize awareness is here. It's always here. It doesn't have to be looking at itself for it to exist, meaning it's here all the time, whether it's focused, completely absorbed in thought stream, watching the thoughts, or some emotion takes its focus. So that's one way, just to notice the awareness that's present. The moment you put attention on the awareness, you begin to feel calmer. Keep attention on the thoughts, you can feel tension building up in the body. So the next way is, again, by contrast. So any noise at all, any sound internally or externally. Right now, it's raining here, and I can hear the rain dripping off the window and hitting the ledge. And I can only hear that noise, or any noise, because there's a silence in which those sounds are arising. Right now, you can only hear my words because they're contrasting against the background silence. So if I'm speaking, there's sound, but it isn't getting rid of the silence that's there underneath. So by contrast, and if you like, you can strike a tuning fork, or you can do some chanting, or if you have a singing bowl, you can make a sound. As the sound fades away, there's a quite palpable silence in the background. So have we made this awareness appear, this silence appear? No, it's always here. It's just in the background of our experience, and it's not shouting for attention. The phenomena that are moving and dancing, the play of all of this, thoughts, feelings, emotions, experiences, other beings, is going to be hypnotic still to our attention for some while. We're just training ourselves to notice that there's something constantly present. And again, silence is not going to feel amazing. It doesn't feel like anything, silence. Awareness doesn't look like anything, feel like anything. But just in the background, there's the silence. And it's always here. And as I'm describing these various methods, if you just want to listen to your body, and something inside you will know which one of these you really feel a pull to. So the silence, it's not a tangible thing, is it? It's not something you can grab a hold of. You can only notice it. You can't do anything to make it happen. You can just kind of learn how to listen to it. We're so used to listening to sounds. And some sounds are soothing. The birds are singing now because it stopped raining. And the rain is still dripping. They're lovely noises. The sound of thought may not be labeled as lovely, but it's still a sound. And they're all contrasting against this background silence that's just continuous. Does the thoughts and the sound have to go away to recognize the silence, or can they be the springboard to contrast? Would you ever recognize the silence without a sound to contrast it with? Could you even? Could you recognize the awareness without a thought to contrast it with? So what I'm trying to get across here, hopefully, is becoming clearer, is everyone is sure their mind needs to go quiet before they can recognize the self. What if that's not true? What if the very presence of your mind is going to allow you to recognize your real self through contrast? And it suddenly becomes a friend then. So the next one, is the stillness. So as you're, all these are ways to describe the same thing: awareness, silence, stillness. Awareness is still, it's not moving, it's just here. Silence is aware. The silence is very, very intelligent, way more intelligent than us human beings. So the stillness we can recognize through contrast again. Every time a thought moves, every time anything moves, an emotion arises, an experience happens, again we can contrast that there is a stillness that's not moving, in which we can recognize the movement of the phenomena. That you're watching already from a still place. You can only see a thought moving if you are still and constantly present and still. So again, there's a stillness which contrasts against that which is moving, and the whole of the manifestation is constantly in flux and changing. And you can recognize that there is something that's just here and watching. It's not moving, it's not changing like everything else. It's a stillness. And if you go for a run, if you do a workout, if your job is very physical, you may notice that when you stop, your body stops moving, that this silence by contrast, this stillness, by contrast, is very noticeable underneath. And all of these won't feel spectacular at first. They'll just feel ordinary. We've been noticing them, and they've been here all this time, but we just haven't recognized them consciously. All the same thing. It's as if the one self is here and it's showing itself through whichever way we can recognize it. For some it'll feel more like stillness, some it'll be silence, some awareness, and everything in between. It has 100 million names and it doesn't really have any name. Or we could call it you. So the next one, and again as I'm describing these, just feel into them. See if there's one of them that really pulls you. Get a sense, I want to do that, I want to try that. Just to spend some time each day noticing one of these or more you can try is going to show you just how easy it is to recognize that right now you don't have to change your emotions, you don't have to get rid of your karma, you don't have to do anything spectacular, and that even the presence of thoughts and emotions is going to help you recognize. So if there's only ever been stillness and there was no thoughts moving, how could you recognize the stillness? By contrast. So the next one is a sense of beingness. And again, we can recognize this through the contrast. All of us are aware of the human part of the human being, and our mind and body. Our body may be doing lots, or it may be sat still. Our mind may be doing lots, or it may be sat still. And contrasting against that which is changing and doing and trying to get somewhere, which is our egoic sense of self, our mind. There is something about you which is just being here. It's just here. It's just being. It's not traveling. It's not becoming. It's not on a journey. It's definitely not trying to find peace or anything like that. So just recognizing there's a part of me that's just being right now. It's not being anything at all. It's not being nobody. It's not being nothing. It's not being someone. It just is. So just recognizing that contrasted against your lungs are moving and your mind may be moving and your blood is pumping. All of that is happening. It's a kind of doingness going on inside the being by contrast. So what is it about you that has no intention and isn't on a journey? You can recognize that contrasting against our mind's busyness and activity. So something is just being. So the next one is a sense of presence. Right now, through contrast, you can see that you're present, that you're here. There's something present and continuous about you that you can recognize through contrast. Thoughts come and go. You can only see those thoughts come and go because you are present all that time in between. So you're here, like watching a movie screen, and the mind pops up with thoughts. It's coming and going. It's thinking, it's talking. And you're here continuously to watch the coming and going. You must be here before the thought, during the thought, and then after the thought to see its presence and absence. So that presence is continuous and unchanging. So again, just recognizing that there's something about you. Whenever we ever notice that presence, all of our attention goes to the thoughts, to the emotions, to the experiences we're having, to the conversation, to the other beings that we're meeting. None of it ever goes on to what is watching all of this, in which all of these thoughts are arising, all of these emotions are arising. Just a sense of presence. You're here, and you're not, you are present rather than absent. So I'm not going to go through the whole list of them. I think there's about 15 in the book, and just for time's sake, we're not going to go through all of them. We'll go to the next one I want to talk about is this moment. We're going to recognize this moment. We can contrast this moment against, we can recognize it by what's appearing in it. So right now, as you're sitting in a room with furniture in it, with objects in it, and the room itself is sitting inside this moment. So this moment needs to be here first before anything can happen in it. It's continuous and it's ever present and it's intangible. You can't find where this moment is with your eyes. You can't hear it. You can hear what's happening inside it, like these words. You can see what's appearing inside it with your eyes. The moment itself, it's continuous and intangible. If we ask the question, when does this moment finish? And we wait to see, when does it end? We can come to see that this moment is continuous. It might be a sense of now. On a clock, it's now and then next and then next. But in reality, in the actual experience, it's continuous and ever present. And yet we never pay any attention to it. So whether we call it now, this moment, or whether we call it awareness, stillness, silence, presence, it's been here all the time. We just didn't know how to look. We didn't know how to recognize. How do we look without our senses? How do we look without our mind? And it's simply to notice the continuous, the unchanging, the invisible, the intangible. And that isn't a hard thing to do once you really sort of notice how to notice, once you recognize that by the contrast of what's happening. Has this moment changed since I've been describing it? Not at all. What's appearing within it may have changed. The words have changed. It may have changed position as you're listening, watching. But has the moment changed? So by contrast, you can see all this that you can see out here with your senses, and all that you can see in here is appearing inside something that you cannot see. We're going to call it this moment for the sake of this one, but it's not actually really got any name. It's more like, well, the next one we'll go to is the contextual field. So your beingness is more like an invisible field of consciousness. And it's the context, the background in which everything is happening. So you can recognize it, contrasting it against the content, the things that are appearing inside it. So similar to how I was describing awareness, you can recognize something coming and going, appearing. What appears and disappears is the content of that field, that object's phenomena. The field itself is the context, or subjective. You cannot see the field in which all this is happening. It's invisible. You can kind of see it a different way. You see it in inner seeing. Has it just arrived because we started noticing it, or was it always here? And you can check back in your experience. When has the awareness ever been absent? It must have been present every time a thought was present, at least before the thought, during and after. When has the silence ever not existed? Is it coming and going? And you can check these things out in your own inner investigation. And as I'm describing these ways, just remember it's not going to feel amazing. You might just notice a sense of contentment, relaxation, maybe a little bit of peace. But when I first recognized the silence myself, it didn't feel anything special at all. And it took me 6 months to realize after that that was what I'd been looking for. But it wasn't shouting for my attention. It wasn't saying, hey, I'm your real self. Come back and look at me again. The more you spend time noticing it, the less it's going to be filtered through thoughts, and the more profound effect it's going to have upon your body and mind. It will slow them down. It will quiet them down. But right now, if it doesn't feel that way, can you honor it just as it is? So I'm going to do just a couple more, and hopefully you can get a sense of we're just learning to look for that which has gone unnoticed because it's not changing. Do we ever put any attention upon that which is unchanging? When did you ever walk in a room and notice the space in the room first, before the objects? Do we ever do that as human beings? And can you turn that around? Once you're aware that, you know what, I've never noticed the space, I never pay any attention to the space in the room, ever. And all my attention goes to the objects that are appearing in the room. In the same way, I've never noticed the space of my being. I always notice the thoughts that are appearing in it, the emotions, the negative or positive experiences. Even when we have a profound experience of our real nature, it's the experience of it that comes and goes is valued more than the constant background field in which that experience is happening. It's not a fault at all. It's just a habit that we can turn around. That's all any awakened being has done. It's just to notice that which is in the background more than that which is in the foreground. And as that happens consistently, the phenomena of thoughts and emotions begin to recede into the background. So could you hear any of this? Could you take any of this in without awareness? If you were standing in the middle of a noisy room and there were 100 voices talking, could you make out one more voice of the mind in contrast? Or does there have to be a silence present already to contrast it? The next one is a sense of here. There's something that follows you around. You probably never noticed. There's a sense that you are here. That's the one thing that you can say for certain. Wherever in the world that you're watching this, it feels like here. And it may seem like I, as in Helen, are there. But if you could somehow come sit here next to me, when you got here, it wouldn't feel like there. It would feel like here. And if I could go to wherever you are, it wouldn't feel like there. It would feel like here. And if you got up out of your chair and walked out of your house, how far could your body move? How far would it go before it didn't feel like here? Each step along the journey, there's a sense, this is where I am, I'm here. So there's this continuous sense of here-ness that's ever present. Wherever your body is, it feels like it's here. You can never arrive there. When you get there, it feels like here. So perhaps then the sense that I am here is not at all what we thought it was. Perhaps we thought it referred to our body. My body's here. But could it be something much deeper? Could it be that this intangible here-ness is actually the space in which my body is moving around in which my thoughts are arising inside? And can you think a thought over there? Can you feel an emotion over there? Or does it have to happen inside this sense of here? Has anything ever occurred to you, any experience, any thought, any emotion, anything that didn't happen here, with this sense of here-ness there first, present first? Just kind of like this now moment. The sense of here, it's not something that's following your body around. It's something much larger. It's not really a sense. You can't find where here is, except to say, well, it's here. But where is that precisely? Can you define it? How far does it reach? Would it stop at the edge of my house? If I stepped outside, it would still feel like I'm here. So maybe instead of here being a reference to a body, here is a reference to my real nature in which my body is appearing and moving. So all of these, again, are ways to look at that which is continuously present. Christ said, Kingdom of Heaven is right here and right now, which means it can't be something that we are trying to get to. It's just to learn how to notice it's here already, that maybe it's been here all the time, but we didn't know how to look, or we were looking for something with our senses, with our mind, or we were looking for something that's changing and moving, some phenomena. None of these ways are a phenomena. The silence, what shape is the silence? How far is it? How big is it? Where does it reach? If each one of us on this satsang can listen to that silence, where is it located? Are there all these different silences, or is there just one that has no boundaries or borders? What about awareness? How big is your awareness? Where does it stop? If you're sitting in the room with someone else, where does your awareness stop and their awareness start? Can that happen? Can that be a thing for something that is intangible like space? Awareness is completely invisible and yet very, very present. So we'll do one more and then I'll open it up for questions. So if anyone wants to ask a question about this in particular or anything to do with satsang, then if you click on the participants section, there's an option to raise your hand. It will let us know that you want to ask a question or to share something. So the last one I want to talk about is the sense of consciousness. So each morning, contrasted against being unconscious while asleep, you can recognize, seemingly at least for now, you can recognize by contrast that there is consciousness present. Right now, you can only hear these words because you're conscious. So that consciousness has to be here first before anything else can happen at all. You're conscious, what you're conscious of, your thoughts, your emotions, your body, how it feels, where it's sitting, what it's doing, what it's not doing. All of that is dependent upon the consciousness to be present first. What does consciousness look like? And where is it? What is it? It's not something you can perceive with your eyes. It's not something you can understand with your mind. You can think about it, but it's not the same as noticing it, recognizing it. Just being conscious of your consciousness, the consciousness that's present first. Noticing that no thought can be perceived, no emotion can happen, no sensation, no experience can come before consciousness is present. There's nobody here to see it, there's nothing to see. Yet how many times during the day do we pay attention to that consciousness? Or does all the attention go to what we're conscious of? And this consciousness is silent and it's still, it's unchanging, unmoving. And it just feels like you because it's always been here. It doesn't feel like the self. It just feels like consciousness. It doesn't feel amazing. And yet, when we spend some time noticing it, being conscious of our consciousness, then we can begin to recognize it's something so much more than just the small me that we thought we were. So what's common about all of these methods? It's something that we wouldn't normally put attention upon. Can you see it's in the background of your experience? It's been ever present and yet no attention goes upon it. That doesn't mean we've just created it. It means it's ever present, but because it's the stillest, most silent thing about you, it's just missed. The most obvious thing is missed so many times because we're looking for something. We're looking for a someone. We're looking at what is changing. And as human beings, we're kind of fascinated by the movement and the change. But when you've had enough of that, when it's become too much, then you can choose one of these methods just to notice the noticing, just to recognize. By whatever name you call it, it's really just you. Just to notice what you really, really are. Just a little bit of time each day spent recognizing this self that is not changing will begin to have profound effects upon your mind and body. From the very first moment you notice, it'll feel relaxing, it'll feel soothing. Emotions may come and go in it, thoughts may come and go. Mind will try to think about it, but it can't because it's not changing. There's nothing to compare it with. It's ever present and constant. It's worth finding and recognizing and seeing it again and again and again, because it's the only part of you that's not going to disappear. Any other part of you that has appeared is going to disappear. Thoughts and emotions and experiences, and of course our body doesn't last forever. So just to recognize that silent background, the witness, the consciousness that it's all happening in. What's the reason for doing this? Well, to live without fear, to live without limits, to live without restrictions, to live without suffering, most importantly. If anything was able to arise, any thought, any emotion, any experience, good, bad, and ugly, could happen, and you recognize clearly, but I am the contextual field in which all this is arising. Could you suffer? Could you fear death if you are already the intangible awareness and not actually something arising in it? You are that too. You are your body and your thoughts and all of that. But it serves us to recognize that which is here first, right as it is now, even if it doesn't feel amazing, even if it doesn't feel special, even if it doesn't feel like you found anything at all. Just to recognize that, what if that was a small pinhole which you could look through into an infinite being, the infinite being that you are, and find something really amazing. And nobody knows how to do this until you do. And now you do. So now you can look. Every awakened being that's ever done this, they didn't know how to look either to start off with. And we're so busy noticing phenomena. And there is nowhere else than Satsang that's going to show you how to look not just this satsang, any satsang. It's going to show you how to perceive that which is always present and that you cannot see with your senses. Okay. So I'll open it up for questions now. So again, I'll come to you in a moment, Amy. If you want to ask a question or share, just click on participants and raise hand option. Okay. So Amy, whenever you're ready.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. How you doing?
Good, good.
I just wanted to ask, so the checking in how we just did, tuning in those ways, and also checking our location inside. So it's sort of the same thing, isn't it? It's just coming back and noticing.
I'm not quite sure what you're asking, sorry.
So the checking, the tuning into the numinous and in those different ways, and then also when we check inside for our location to see.
Right, yeah.
So it's kind of a similar, just a subtle difference, isn't it, with that?
Yeah, all of the ways that we've mentioned, whether we do it awareness or silence or stillness, it's not a tangible thing, it's intangible, and therefore it doesn't have a location. Like the sense of here-ness, we can't say where it is. We can't say it's right here, you know, if I couldn't pinpoint it, but it's definitely present. Because it's really just looking and not finding a someone, not finding a location for the someone that we've perceived ourselves to be. It's also another very, very effective way. I can't say where I am because I know where my body is, I know where my thoughts are, I know where my emotions are, but where I am, I'm not something locatable. So it'll show you that you're not something with a fixed location, like we're also certain of, I live here in this body. Okay, well, where? You know, when we actually look, there's a sense that I'm in the body, but is that all? You know, can I really say that's the only place I am? Can I find a boundary? You know, is there a Helen-shaped being sort of superimposed and squashed in this body? Or is that not really how it is? Yeah, so when you look, you can't find it, can you?
Because I think where I get stuck is with the location is when you say like where does it begin and where does it end? Yeah, my mind kind of just you know, because it doesn't there's just like a feeling of like it's evident, it feels so evident that there is a boundary. So it's like I can tune in and feel what it is without phenomenon, and without movement and without sound, and I can tune into that, but then to see that as everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very common. It was the same for me. So it feels like you recognize yourself to be intangible. Then you said it feels like there's a boundary. I think it was like that what you said, yeah.
Yeah, or even not. It's yeah, it's like I guess it's because I'm trying to use my mind still, maybe, and my mind's coming up with that. It's not possible. It just kind of like
we hit a wall here, don't we? Because we don't know how to think about ourselves as an intangible being. What does that actually mean? So if there's a feeling that I have a boundary, even as an intangible being, can that be the best evidence to take? What does, this is really how I got around it, so hopefully it'll be helpful. What does that intangible being feel like? Does it feel like anything? What does awareness feel like? And you know, and I recognize it doesn't feel like anything. It's like saying, what does the space in this room feel like? So if there's a feeling that I'm, or a sensation that I'm only somewhere, you know, that there is a boundary. Is this the place where we stop our investigation? Is that enough evidence? Because that feeling is perceivable still, isn't it? The sense of a boundary is perceivable, kind of very subtly, but you can see that it's there. Can you get a recognition of it?
It's
So
like
if it's
like oh, just give up. It's very subtle, but it's just kind of like, well, there's no way that that's possible.
yeah. And you hit this wall because mind doesn't really want you to go any further here, because we're about to smash through something rather important. So it's just to recognize mind from mind's perspective. It's true, mind can't see that you're everywhere, can't come to know that, and it stops, it references a feeling or a sense or a subtle something and says, see, that there seems to be a boundary. But if that is a seems to be, it's still perceivable, feels like, seems like. What does the space in the room feel like that you're sitting in? You know, can you divide something that's intangible, like space? How would you, if you tried your hardest right now, that in the room that you're sitting in, to divide the space into two, could you do it?
Mind saying yes.
Wonderful mind. You've got to love that mind, right? Something to investigate there then, because if you are more like the space in the room than any particular object in it, have a look and see, spend a little while contemplating, can that space, can something intangible be divided? And if it cannot be divided, then it must go on forever in all directions, and it doesn't have a center or a location or a place where it starts. So that's a good thing to kind of contemplate. How far does my formlessness reach, and what could actually stop it? Anything that I tried to use to stop it, to mark a boundary or to slice it in two, would be a form, an object. Would that have any impact on the formlessness?
I remember when you put the glass in the water, like I can get a sense of that. I think when you said the room, I could like go, oh, I'm in a small box, so I just put a thing. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what my mind was saying. But yeah. So if
Would
I
that
sit,
go on?
yeah.
Sorry.
So if I sit with that question just openly and just see what comes experientially.
Yeah, if I built a wall in the middle of my formlessness or the space in the room, has it impacted the space at all? Has it changed the space at all? Can you see? It's enough that if you can see there's an assumption it does, and that is worth checking out. Because if there's nothing that can divide or separate formlessness, if that comes clear inside, the automatic understanding that comes from that is, well, if I am formless, I must be everywhere all the time. No being has ever suddenly woken up and gone, oh my God, I'm formless and everywhere. Well, I suppose it has happened. But for me, there was some sitting and thinking, what does it really mean if I am not the thing?
Oh yeah, it's a big one, isn't it?
Where does the silence end? Can you divide it into, if there's 10 beings sat in a room, is there 10 sets of silence? Is it possible that there's some boundary somewhere? 10 lots of stillness? Or is that just not a thing that's possible for something intangible, without substance, insubstantial? If we had, and we did it before, we had a cake in Satsang and we divided it into slices. Still the same cake, but now it looks individual. Could you do that with the space that the cake is in? Could you slice it like that? Or is it a whole different thing? The mind is going, oh, don't think about this. This is weird, and ooh, you know, there's some resistance going on. But it's only because we're not used to thinking in these terms. You kind of got to stretch
It's
yourself a
this,
little bit.
like, yeah, because there's lots of different parts that feel like are at play, and like there's one part that sees it, and then there's another part that goes, oh, that changes everything, or you know, it's like that's big, and that's not possible. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not that it's not possible, but that it's not possible for me to be that or identify as that, you know.
Yeah. You just have to turn around the assumption, or not automatically go with the assumption that you cannot come to know this, because that assumption is from the mind. It's true for the mind, it's true in duality, but it's not at all true for you. But we kind of have this tendency to, we go so far in our investigation and we hit this inner wall of, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like I must come to an end somewhere. It feels like it does. It seems like I come to an end, you know, and we're still treating the formlessness like it's a form, very, very subtly. So, you know, just don't believe that assumption that you can't find this out. You really can.
Yeah.
And once you push through that assumption, something quite wonderful is going to happen. It's true for mind, which is why mind's so insistent that you can't find it out. Do you get a sense there's more to explore?
Yeah, I do. Thank you for the encouragement.
Went through the same thing myself. It took me a little while to realize that I didn't have to stop in my investigation. You know, that I realized that some beings had recognized that they were everywhere all the time. It's like, how did they do that? You know, what did they do? And I really sort of looked at it, and you know, what is definable evidence? And it cannot, you know, to whether I'm everywhere or somewhere, and it cannot be a phenomena, even the most subtle perceived. Well, it feels like I've come to an end. But is the real self, or is that some subtle energetic form appearing inside, or something like that, you know? Lovely. Very good investigation. Very helpful for everyone, I should think. Thank
I
you.
wanted to ask one more question, if I might, actually.
Yeah.
Is just to do with being in relationship with somebody that's not interested in this to the extent that I'm interested in this. And so but just in general, like being in relationship with being like in brought into mindset of conversation, which is where the understanding is that we are limited, and people, and you know, all of that kind of thing. Then kind of being drawn into that, and then it just feels like there's a sleepiness that comes from that, and then it's like, oh, and then there's, and it's not like it all goes, and there's constant contemplation going on and dissolving, and all of that kind of stuff is still going on. But it's just that this bit, because this bit is needs a lot more seeing for me, the thing of being formless and everywhere. I just wondered if you had any advice on how to navigate that a little bit.
So are you asking what the feeling is when you're talking with some people that are still perceiving themselves to be a limited being, and that's bringing up some sleepiness, did you say?
Yeah, I feel like it's such a jump from this that I'm still embodying, that yeah, I just wondered if you had any advice around perhaps to keep a little bit of that contemplation going, not just around yeah, perhaps to keep a bit of that contemplation going still through the...
Well, just to recognize there might be times when it can't happen. You know, if I'm stood in the middle of the supermarket on a Saturday and I'm having a conversation with someone, maybe I don't need to in that moment be constantly in contemplation of what's true. You know, maybe that's a time when it just can't happen, you know. And maybe there's times where it's more appropriate, and maybe the sense of feeling tired is as you're trying to make your attention go to two places at the same time. Contemplation is, believe it or not, just not even something you're doing, it's just happening more and more. You know, so maybe it's also the sense that I'm trying to make sure I do it. Even that is happening spontaneously. You're literally not doing anything. There's probably not an answer that mind likes, but
no, that's lovely. Okay.
yeah, it's kind of something that it starts as a very small spark, and then it wants to happen all the time. The contemplation becomes a more like a meditation that's just ongoing throughout the waking state, more and more, but less and less effort behind it, because more and more you're just watching it occur. And if there's times that it's not occurring, it's fine. Like, it's not happening at all when you're asleep at night, you know, or if you watch a really good movie, you know, you don't have to be like, hang on, I need to be asking who am I underneath all of this, you know. There's times when you can just have some time off and, you know, relax, and it's not going to send you backwards or, you know, sort of hurt your progress so far.
Yeah, because the contemplation, like all the rest of the contemplation is on automatic now. It's just going on, like all the different questions coming at different, like to whatever's happening in the moment, like just opening that up. But it's just the formlessness side of things just seems to, and then I'm like, oh yes. And that, you know. Probably
best just to spend some time on your own when you can to look at that, and you can really sort of go into it. And if you're not trying to make something happen, then you probably won't be disturbed having conversations about being a limited being. It's probably some sense that it's taking you away from your contemplation or something like that. You know, the reason for this sleepiness, or I just don't, you know, some sense I don't want to do this. But I would use the conversations. If I was in a conversation with someone and they were coming from their ego, I would use that. I would like to sort of really listen to ego talking and try to understand why it talks that way, why it thinks that. Not like I'm, you know, like really staring, listening, you know, but you can sort of hear your own ego talking in the people, can't you, and recognize the way it moves, and in an effort to understand it more and love it more. You know, so it can be quite a valuable thing just to really listen. You know, everyone is talking about experiences or thoughts or feelings when they talk. Nobody's talking about themselves.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's a big mirror. Yeah.
Lovely. And just lastly, the contemplation becomes you can achieve so much more in a short space of time the more you deeper you've gone into this process. So it might end up being just 5 minutes a day is enough to just chip away at this assumption. You know, it's not a clock time thing really. It's really how interested am I in seeing what's true and not stopping at the assumptions.
Yeah, there seems to be like a little bit of just a little bit of just around this subject. I don't know, like, you know, come on, you've got to make an effort or something, do you know, like that.
Where you hit a point where we're not used to thinking that way, we're not used to thinking about ourselves as an intangible being, you might have to put a little oomph in behind it. I know that's contradictory because I've just said you're not doing anything, but you know, everything I say is a paradox, so you just have to figure it out.
Yeah, no, I can see that way, definitely. When there's a bit of resistance, it needs a little bit of
Lovely. Thanks. Good questions there. Thank you. Thank you. Lopo?
Me again.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm all right. So emotions, when they come up and when they're there, it's all right when there's one, and I can like, you know, ask if it's really true, and usually stay with it. You know, it can be
as much as you can. Yeah.
But it's when there's like seems to be like all of them all at once, and I'm like, which flipping question do I ask, you know, about them, or do I go through one by one, you know, like, whoa, yeah.
So you start off with some fear, and then you feel some anger because the fear's still there. And then you feel guilty because you forgot to question, and then you've got all kinds of stuff going on.
And then, am I doing it right? And then, like, oh, I'm doing it through my mind.
Frustration,
oh,
and
yeah.
So in those moments, you can just recognize that they're all just a bunch of frequencies, those emotions, aren't they? And there's kind of one emotion that, for me, it just appeared as overwhelm. You know, this sense of being overwhelmed by emotion, which isn't really technically an emotion, but it kind of is. So I would just ask, you know, is it really true I'm being overwhelmed? I can be overwhelmed. And it would generally simmer down into one definable emotion. But really, you are also testing yourself, you see, because you're growing confidence and ability to just be with something when it comes up, instead of our usual, don't want to look at that. Yeah. So life will say, okay, you're getting good at this. Have 3 or 4 at once and see how you cope. And are you going to go into thoughts and agree with thoughts that I'm being overwhelmed, or this is too much, or, you know, and to recognize if however much you recognize that you are that formless nature, the silence, whatever name you call it, can that silence be overwhelmed? And if the answer is no, then you have to kind of know that inside. Is it really true? Or am I experiencing the assumption that I can be overpowered, overwhelmed by these? It's really, life is going to ask you to grow into your role as a intangible being, so that you know, you can handle one emotion that we've all been used to avoiding, and then you learn to handle the intensity of it when it comes. Even that can't overwhelm me. And then it's just life saying, here, you know, stretch yourself a bit more, you know, let go of a few more beliefs, you know, that anything can come and everything can come, and I'm still right here. You know, it might seem a bit dodgy at some moments. I'm going to be swept away, you know, I might hold on to something just in case. But you can just ask, can I be overwhelmed by anything? Or is there anything that can be too much for me? You know, and just really that question, just to disperse the charge of it, you know, ride out the storm.
Yeah, it does, like I say, feel, but it does seem unseen from neck. But it does like feel better when I'm in the question, or stay with the question. I will admit, I have then, you know, just really identified and just been it. And
it's fine. Yeah. It's not the goal to continuously question. It doesn't mean that you failed if you identify with it. It's the intention behind what you're doing rather than what you're actually doing. There's always going to be times when you get swept up in it, and it's just, you know, you were just lost in it for half an hour, whatever, you know, a day.
Yeah,
it's going to happen less and less.
Well. Yeah, it is less. Yeah.
So just look at what, when an experience happens like that, look at what mind is telling you, and that's your question. So if mind's telling you this is too much, I can't handle it, then that's your, is that true? It's too much. So whatever doubt mind is giving you, this is never going to stop. You've been feeling fear for ages and it's still coming. When is it ever going to? It's never going to stop. You're not doing it right. You know, whatever it's saying. I'm sure this didn't happen for awakened beings. You know, they felt it and it disappeared the first time or something. Whatever it's saying, that's your question. You turn it into, is it really true? And then add on mind's statement afterwards.
Brilliant. Thank you, Helen.
Good question. Ian and Maggie?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I think I have a question, not sure. But something we were talking yesterday, and you said something that's made me kind of go, oh wow. And I'm still kind of like,
what it was.
No, well, it was around, there was one area in my life that was kind of like, I'm trying to get the words out, that wasn't progressing as I would like.
Oh yeah.
And And it's been like that for a while, and then you said something along the lines of, if I got this right, that the universe, the self, the whole consciousness manifests out of a desire for something that wants to take place. So it's really got nothing to do with you as a person. It's life itself manifesting something in response to something.
Yeah, so to put it into context, oh,
Yeah.
crikey, big echo. To put it into context, there was something that you wanted to do, and the sense was coming up, you're not sure if you're supposed to be doing it. There was a should I or shouldn't I?
Yeah.
And we were talking about it isn't a personal desire. No desire is personal. It's the whole universe is moving as that desire. It feels like I want, but it's really the whole universe. None of us are ever separate, ever. So that desire has to be what wants to happen, because it's not just a personal you that wants it, that could be wanting it for the wrong reason, or it isn't the right thing. Just to kind of...
Yeah. And it's kind of like, it's been a while since I've been like really blown and kind of away for a while. And it's kind of blown me away all day long. I've been thinking about it and contemplating around it, and in a good way. It feels like a good thing. I guess I'm just kind of asking, what's the best way to kind of ask a question around that?
Well, you could ask, is it true that I should or shouldn't be doing this? You know, you could ask that, couldn't you? You could say, because the reason you're doubting is because it could be possible, according to mind, that you should or shouldn't be doing this. But if it's the whole universe wanting to appear as you doing this, that should make it harder for you to believe should or shouldn't. First of all, perhaps shouldn't. I shouldn't be doing this. You won't be able to believe, and then eventually even should. It'll just be it's just life appearing as you doing this. Without any personal choice, kind of. It still feels like a personal choice I want, but it's not actually, is it, when you see from that place?
It feels like it's a little kind of gap into something kind of huge.
Very big.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
If you follow this trail of thought anywhere, it's going to lead you very quickly to an understanding that you've never made a decision ever.
Yeah.
Which comes with the bonus, I can never get it wrong.
Yeah.
Because even if it was a personal desire and you weren't supposed to be doing it, try as hard as you might, it won't happen. And consequently, the opposite, if you should be doing it and you try everything you can to get out of it, it'll still, despite your best resistance, break through bit by bit.
Yeah.
How can we know that something's supposed to happen? Well, if it's here, guess what? It's supposed to be happening. It's already occurring. In the beginning stages, at least, it's supposed to be happening. That's a good sign that something's supposed to go that way if it's already going that way.
Happening. Yeah.
Just
right,
a little.
okay.
I know we're joking about it, but it's a common thing. What should I do? Well, if you think you should do it, try and do it. If it's not supposed to happen, it'll be a non-starter.
Yeah.
It's immensely, when I go, oh gosh, I can't get it wrong, when I really took this in.
I feel like I'm at that little, looking through this gap that's kind of opened up, and I'm suddenly kind of...
As if there was a personal you, a separate being called Ian, You could be making the wrong decision, and how would you know? But if it's not ever really just being Ian, if it's the whole self, which is indivisible and one, moving as Ian right there doing something, even the questioning, should I or shouldn't I, is the universe doubting itself, which sounds crazy, but it is possible in a human being.
Yeah. Yeah, that is, isn't it? Yeah, that's mad, isn't it?
Lovely.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's helped.
No idea what we said, but it's all good.
Sounds good to me.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sophie?
Oh, hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. Yeah. I just have met you only very recently. And I'm going to do your next course. So thank you for that. I'm a bit overwhelmed.
It's okay, take your time.
The thing is, I haven't really. I'm just having a massive heat experience.
A lot of energy shifting.
Yeah. I listened to your satsang at like 4 o'clock the other morning. Just happened to be awake, which was loving what is. And it just brought so much relief to parts of me that have really been so sort of searching and for a very long time, and having a lot of challenge through my life as a spiritual awakening, as you can know. So I want to say thank you, because that helped. Just this seeing that it's hard to put into words exactly what was received, but the sense.
If anybody understands that, it's me, don't worry. It's just like, how you describe that in words, you know, it's just, and I spend every Thursday and Monday trying to do it, you know.
But this accepting of now, you know, of this moment, was you know, brought this, you know, a deep relief, and yet, and it's a surprise really that there is nothing that you have to do to purify, to in utter truth. That is the truth. There's nothing you need to do to in the seeing, because the moment you start, you're kind of like mixing. You're mixing into it again, and you're making more story, and more you focus on, you know, because as you go, the whatever's in the phenomena appearing gets very intense, or, you know, the stories can arise even stronger. Like, I started to get, you know, all this part of me that just wants pain, you know, wants to create more pain. That's come up very clearly recently, this kind of ego part that's just, and then you're saying, well, life will bring you what you're agreeing with. It's like, oh, you know, that element there's very strong pain, contraction, whatever it came from, past lives or my own attachment to that unconsciously or making it conscious, and yet there's this utter letting it be of like, well, am I just, adding to this by really, okay, there's a seeing of it, there's a feeling of it, it's uncomfortable, it's painful, and it's, and maybe I am attracting more painful situations through that belief. But ultimately I know that it's nothing to do with me, it's not relevant anymore.
There is, once we can finally love our ego, meaning just accepting how it is and whatever we're feeling, there is this period where it will bring emotions to you, it'll bring thoughts and pretty much everything that we've rejected, inside ourselves. And I felt like I was being asked, how much am I willing to love this? How much, like we were just saying to the lady with, lots of emotions going on at once. Okay, you say you want to love, how much are you wanting actually to live like that? And there was this period afterwards of just being with everything that came up. And there was some contemplation as well, some questioning, which, we'll look at next week as the second part of this, how to work with these energies to dissolve them faster. But just allowing them for perhaps the first time ever that we've actually done that, it might seem like it made more sense to suppress them, because the moment we start allowing, some things can come up quite quickly. But it would just be in this pressure cooker inside, with all these energies that we generated thinking we were this being trying to wake up, the one trying to get there. We've identified as that for so long, and that comes with a lot of emotional pain. Whether we realize we're looking for awakening, or we just thought we wanted to be happy, or wanted a better job, or whatever it is we felt we wanted, had a lot of experiences of not getting it. And so the relief behind that, and they're just allowing all this stuff to come out, it'll just come in your openness now, because it can, and you'll be sort of sometimes a little bit surprised how much is in there. But it's because you are able to just love it now. It doesn't mean liking it, does it? It means just accepting it's here, and it just needs to be felt. That's the thing that happens behind. Of course, we're not told about that, because we are just recognize what you are, and then everything will be blissful. And there's a little stage in the middle,
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's just to know, you probably feel as it's coming, this stuff is happening, that there's some depressurizing or something going on inside, and energies start to flow back to where they're supposed to be able to go, and the body starts to relax a little bit more. We've kind of just been shove all this in and put the lid on tight and never look in there again. It's kind of how we're taught as a human being. But there's an authenticity in just being with it, isn't there, when it arises?
Yeah.
Lovely. Just to know that you're loving it rather than sustaining it is enough. Just to be watching without rejecting it is no longer fueling ego. It can only survive if you take the stance of ego when it arises and try to reject it. Then you're continuing it. If you just allow it in that space, you're no longer fueling it. It will run out of steam at some point. You can kind of get a sense of that, but it just helps to know if there's a lot coming up at once. Lovely. Well done, and well done for loving something that everyone thinks is unlovable. It's we can love anything. Our capacity for love is amazing.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, it's lovely to meet you, and thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah.
You take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we'll finish with Barbara.
Can you hear me?
I can, yep. Hello.
I'm having a panic moment. I'm having a wish I hadn't put my hand up moment. Because I'm not quite sure what I want to ask. One of the desires that keeps coming up in a kind of a very upset, angry way is to be seemingly included in my partner's life, socially, with other people, not just the two of us on our own. This is the person aspect of it. Somewhere today it occurred to me that it's something that I've created, this thing, because he doesn't exist exactly. And I've heard you say many times about jealousy, that jealousy is a really good one to help to fuel the desire to finish with it. And I've been thinking, you know, a few times, I'm not really aware that there's any there. And I'm just wondering if, and it's all thoughts, I know it's all thoughts, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I didn't think that this relationship is more evolved because there's relationships with two people, okay, because we can both move from this space and then trust him and he goes out and does his thing and that's fine. And I was remembering that in my youth, I was unable to do that because there was an insane amount of jealousy and that extreme insecurity. And it just occurred to me that maybe I've created this I can't be included thing, because somehow that's I've done all this. I've chosen a situation where I can't be included in order to avoid that, perhaps. Because what happened was that yesterday he kind of dumped a situation on me where he wanted to include me in his life. This is what he's saying, is he's feeling that he wants it to change and he doesn't know how to change it. And instead of feeling pleased and happy, I don't know what has been going on since then inside, but not at all what I expected to feel.
Perhaps because this desire has been unfulfilled for a while. I don't even, even when it looks like it's about to happen, I don't even believe it type of thing going on inside,
What, after 7 years? You want to tell me this after 7 years? It's like it's too late, forget it. And I sort of basically said, Cinderella hasn't got anything to wear. I don't know what you're talking about.
But can that other person change until you change how this is being held inside you? If you're not just one person in this relationship, if you are both beings in the relationship, then can it change while you're still holding? Can you have a different manifestation? If we're experiencing our thoughts, can we have a different manifestation, i.e. what we want happening, without a change happening internally?
No.
So I'd suggest looking at, and you don't have to do it right now, but what do you feel when you don't feel included? So you mentioned insecurity, and which is a form of fear, isn't it? Another name for fear. And write down or notice which emotions you feel when you don't get what you want, and then contrast that against how would I feel if I did get what I want, if it was absolutely the way I want. How would I feel that I don't think I feel right now, don't seem to feel right now? So if I would feel let's say in this example, if you got what you wanted, I'm just going to throw some words out there. Maybe you felt loved, maybe you felt appreciated, maybe you felt accepted, and I'm just using those as an example. So if you can recognize that you're trying to use this external thing needs to happen before I can feel this way. But at the same time, you're saying it can't happen until I feel that way. You know, you've got this loop going around with it. So when I'm included in this part of this person's life, I'll feel this way, is what you're saying. And if you don't feel that way right now, how can that occur? If the manifestation and the feeling inside have to happen together, how can the manifestation out there happen if you're not feeling it in here?
What occurred to me last night was what I feel is the same on both sides, fear and unworthiness. If it happens, then that's what, that the feeling of it actually happening would bring up the same feelings.
I see, right, I'm with you. So is then, you know, you can question that unworthiness, and do you need anything to happen to make you feel good enough? Do you really need, and can anything that happens in your external environment make you feel that way that you want to feel? You know, do you have to feel unworthy, or can you do something about that? Because if you look at why you want,
I've been over this last time now, a couple of weeks, I've been seeing very clearly that everything that's ever happened or seemed to have happened could never have been any different than it was, because it's only the reflection, whatever it is.
yeah. So can this reflection that we're calling another being make you feel worthy? Can they do anything that's going to cause that to happen? If out there is really you, you know, you're everywhere, it's not really another being. And then we've had the cart before the horse, haven't we? So is it true I'm not good enough right now? And, you know, deep investigation of that. And even coming to see that I don't need anything to change to feel adequate. You know, that's a very well believed thought in a human consciousness. When X, Y, and Z happen, and when A, B, and C disappear, then I'll be good enough. And usually, you know, when I stop feeling unworthy, then I'll be awakened. I hear this so much. But I can't be awakened until I stop feeling unworthy, you know. So can this emotion just arise inside, feeling unworthy, and you question it and see, you know, you come back to that peace inside. Is it really true I am not good enough right now as I am already? Just as you are right now. What is the evidence that you aren't? Really, it comes down to thoughts and feelings and experience. If you could give me any evidence at all that you're not worthy, it would be thoughts, feelings, and experiences. There's nothing else other than that to use. Does that affect you? You know? Because this desire cannot manifest if you're putting conditions upon it, such as it has to make you feel a certain way. And there's also, at the same time, by the sounds of it, some other energy saying, but I don't really want it to happen because I'll still feel bad. I've got a nice little loop going around there, not so nice loop. I would spend some time just looking inside and really questioning, the root of it all, which is, am I really not good enough, actually? Because then mind will stop trying to find ways to prove it to yourself, or to prove it's not true either. You know, when you're in that silent space of your being, you don't need anything to feel good. And ironically, everything comes then anyway, because you're not putting a condition upon the manifestation. Good. Very good question. Lovely. Let us know how you get on with that. Fantastic. Lovely. So we will leave it there for today. Lovely. Fantastic. So thank you for joining me. Namaste. And next Thursday at the same time, we'll look at the being part of this and really dig into how to, if tonight is how to be what you are, then next week will be how to not be what you're not. The other side of that coin. Thank you.